In the lavishly decorated bridal chamber, Chloe resembled a pristine white camellia as she gently adjusted her delicate veil. Beside her, Amelia, her dearest confidante, tried to soothe the invisible wounds bleeding in Chloe's heart. The wedding should have begun by now, a grand celebration in full swing, but the groom was nowhere to be seen. "He loves you, Chloe," Amelia reassured her, though her voice, despite her best efforts to sound optimistic, carried a tinge of doubt. "Nicholas just wants everything to be perfect." Even to Amelia herself, those words felt unconvincing. Chloe knew deep down that something ominous lurked beneath the surface. Nicholas, the man she loved, was never one to be late, especially not for an event as momentous as this. Her eyes darted toward the clock on the wall. Each passing second felt unbearably heavy, pressing down on her chest, suffocating her. At last, the priest entered, his usually kind face now clouded with an unusual solemnity. One glance was enough for Chloe to sense impending doom. "I regret to inform you, Miss Chloe," the priest spoke in a grave tone, "we have just received word that Nicholas will not be coming." The word struck like a thunderbolt, shattering Chloe's heart into 1,000 pieces. Her knees nearly buckled, and she clutched the edge of the table for support. Tears, like morning dew, began rolling down her cheeks, smudging her meticulously applied makeup. "No, this must be a mistake," she whispered, her voice trembling like autumn leaves in the wind. Yet deep inside, a cold realization was already settling in. Without waiting for any further explanations, Chloe bolted out of the church. Curious and pitying gazes from the wedding guests followed her as she hurried down the aisle. The humiliation was unbearable, but the pain, like a slow-burning fire, was far worse. She reached the parking lot and came to a halt, her eyes desperately scanning for Nicholas. But he was nowhere to be found. All she saw was emptiness. Lifting her gaze to the gray sky, she struggled to swallow the sobs threatening to escape, but all she felt was shame, devastation, and an agony so profound it tore at her soul. A whirlwind of questions, sharp as daggers, pierced her mind. Why? What had she done wrong? And then a memory surfaced, a conversation from 2 weeks ago. She recalled Nicholas's distant expression, the hesitation in his eyes, as he held her hand and asked, Are you sure this is what you want?" His question had shattered the comfortable silence between them, catching her off guard. "Of course, I want this," she had responded, confusion creeping into her voice. "We love each other, don't we?" Nicholas had hesitated for a long moment before finally offering a smile. A forced, fragile smile, one that Chloe had been too blind to recognize as a warning. Now back in the present, Chloe sank onto the pavement. Her wedding gown, once a vision of purity, spread around her like a withering lily. Tears now flowed freely, soaking into the soft fabric. Humiliation, heartbreak, it all threatened to consume her. She wished she could vanish into nothingness. Across the street, hidden inside a sleek black car, Nicholas sat watching her in silence. His phone rested in his palm, a mute witness to his cowardice. Echoing in his mind were his mother's words, haunting him like a curse. "This marriage is not what you need, Nicholas. Think about your future. This marriage will never work." Lowering his head, he clenched his jaw, torn between guilt and selfishness. He knew his actions were cruel, unforgivable. But he hadn't had the courage to face Chloe, to confront the expectations that weighed upon him. Chloe wiped her tears, took a deep breath, and made a bold decision. She would leave. She would not allow anyone, not even Nicholas, to turn her into a pitiful victim. Meanwhile, Nicholas remained frozen in his car, watching as Chloe walked away, a sinking feeling whispering to him that this moment was just the beginning of something he could never undo. As the disastrous day of the wedding faded into the past, Chloe vanished from the city. No farewells, no explanations, no confrontations. She simply boarded a bus, heading toward an unknown destination, leaving everything behind. The pain, the memories, the people she once knew. Every mile that passed only deepened the ache inside her, but she knew she had to move forward. Staying was not an option. The first few months in a foreign town were grueling. Chloe rented a tiny room in a quiet little town and took a job as a waitress at a small cafe. Day by day, she pieced together the fragments of her shattered life, trying to rebuild. But the pain clung to her like a shadow, a constant reminder of her failure. Just when she thought she had reached rock bottom, life threw her an unexpected twist, one that would change her forever. 2 months after leaving everything behind, Chloe's body began to show strange signs. Persistent nausea, overwhelming fatigue, and an indescribable feeling of change. At first, she blamed stress, the emotional turmoil weighing her down. Until one night, when doubt gnawed at her relentlessly, she bought a pregnancy test from the local pharmacy. That night, in the dimly lit bathroom of her rented apartment, Chloe stared at the test in her trembling hands. Positive. Her heart pounded in her chest. A whirlwind of emotions surged through her, fear, anxiety, and an unexpected flicker of joy. A part of her panicked at the thought of raising a child alone, with no support, no family to lean on. But at the same time, a newfound sense of purpose began to take root inside her. This baby, this life growing within her, was her second chance. A reason to keep moving forward, no matter how treacherous the road ahead. The days that followed were filled with adjustments and harsh realities. She scheduled doctor's appointments, faced the overwhelming responsibility of impending motherhood. But nothing could have prepared her for the moment when her doctor smiled warmly, pointed at the ultrasound screen, and said, "Congratulations, Chloe. You're having 4 babies." Chloe blinked, stunned. 4? The doctor's calm confirmation echoed in her ears. Quadruplets. Her world spun. This was beyond anything she had ever imagined, beyond anything she thought she could handle. Can I do this?" she murmured, barely aware she had spoken the words aloud. The doctor simply smiled, a knowing, reassuring smile. "You'll see, Chloe. Mothers always find a way." With the weight of this revelation pressing on her, Chloe knew she had to change everything. Her cramped apartment was no longer enough. She scraped together every last penny she had earned from the cafe, desperately seeking a modest house in the outskirts of town. It wasn't much, but it was enough. A shelter, a safe place for her and her children. Amidst the chaos, Chloe discovered a resilience within herself she never knew existed. Even with the burden of carrying 4 lives inside her, she worked tirelessly. She balanced doctor visits, long shifts at the cafe, and preparing for her new reality. Every little milestone became a victory, a step forward in reclaiming her life. But there were also nights of unbearable loneliness, when the weight of it all became too much, and she cried in silence. Doubts and fears whispered in her mind. If Nicholas knew, would he even care? But she shoved those thoughts aside. She had no time for regrets. The news of her quadruplet pregnancy was both a terrifying shock and an unyielding source of strength. Chloe had endured heartbreak, humiliation, and abandonment. But if she had survived all of that, then no challenge, no matter how daunting, could break her now. Her children would be her everything. And no one, not even Nicholas, could change that. The days passed swiftly like a shuttle weaving through fabric. Chloe found herself caught in the whirlwind of routine prenatal checkups and the endless work of cleaning and renovating her small home. Time never seemed sufficient for her to pause, to fully grasp the profound changes unfolding in her life. Then the fateful day arrived. The labor was arduous, filled with trials and pain, yet, like a miracle, all 4 little angels entered the world, their cries ringing strong and healthy. As Chloe cradled each child in her arms, a warm current surged down her spine, radiating through her entire being. She had never known love so pure, so unconditional. In that sacred moment, all doubts, all lingering fears dissolved into nothingness. From that second onward, Chloe knew she would do anything, sacrifice everything, to protect and nurture these fragile little lives. 5 years slipped by in the blink of an eye. Chloe had fully embraced the life of a single mother, raising her children alone. The once quiet house now echoed with laughter, filled with the vibrant chaos of colorful toys scattered in every corner. Each boy was like a unique musical note, composing the symphony of Chloe's life. James, the eldest, was inquisitive and energetic, never tiring of asking why, about everything. Michael, the second-born, was shy and reserved, yet possessed a heart full of warmth and affection. Brian, the third, was mischievous and clever, always knowing how to make others laugh with his playful antics. And Hunter, the youngest, was sharp-witted, a little leader who instinctively took charge of his brothers in their adventures and pranks. Life was exhausting, relentless, but Chloe never once complained. She worked tirelessly to provide for her small family, shouldering every responsibility, no matter how challenging. Because to her, the bright smiles and innocent gazes of her sons were priceless reminders of why she had to keep moving forward. But life is unpredictable, and fate often has its own plans. One ordinary evening, as Chloe took her boys to the park, amidst the bustling crowd and cheerful voices, she suddenly caught sight of a familiar figure, someone she never dared to imagine she would see again. Her heart stopped. Her entire body froze. Nicholas. He was there, seated on a bench, engaged in conversation with someone. But then, his expression shifted the moment his eyes locked onto hers. For a brief second, silence swallowed the chaos around them. His gaze flickered to the 4 boys playing nearby, and the uncanny resemblance between them left no room for doubt. The moment Chloe had always feared had arrived. She stood paralyzed, eyes fixed on Nicholas, while her sons remained blissfully unaware, still running around, laughing on the playground. He was only a few steps away, yet in that instant, time felt suspended, the world held still. Nicholas stared at her, then glanced back at the boys, their features reflecting his own. The truth was undeniable. Chloe's heart pounded wildly. She knew she had to leave before Nicholas could approach. Grabbing her bag and masking the turmoil rising within her, she called out, "James, Michael, Brian, Hunter, it's time to go home." She tried to sound steady, but her voice wavered slightly. The boys, reluctant to leave, begged for more time, but her firm tone left no room for argument. They hurriedly gathered their toys, while Chloe urged them to move faster. Just as she turned to leave, a deep, familiar voice stopped her in her tracks. "Chloe?" The sound of his voice, so familiar, yet so distant, sent a sharp pang through her chest. Slowly, she turned to face him. Nicholas stood there, his gaze locked onto her, a storm of emotions swirling in his eyes. Shock, disbelief, and something else, something unreadable. "Chloe," he murmured, as if saying her name for the first time in years. Then, his eyes shifted once more to the 4 boys. A flicker of realization dawned across his face, his breath hitching. "Or are they mine?" he asked, voice unsteady. Chloe froze. A wave of heat surged to her face. She had known this moment would come, but no amount of preparation could make it easier. "Yes," she finally admitted, keeping her voice as steady as possible. "They are your children." Nicholas took a step closer, his gaze darting between her and the boys as if trying to piece together a puzzle too overwhelming to comprehend. How old are they?" His voice trembled, though the answer was already evident. 5, Chloe replied, her hands clenching into fists to stop them from shaking. Nicholas visibly flinched, as if the words had landed a heavy blow. He opened his mouth, then closed it, struggling to process the reality before him. "They're really mine?" he whispered, as if needing to hear it again. Chloe felt the ground beneath her shift. For 5 years, she had braced herself for this encounter, yet now, she found herself utterly lost, unsure of what to say or do. But she owed him the truth. "Yes, Nicholas," she said softly. "They're your sons." A heavy silence settled between them, suffocating and endless. Nicholas raked a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture Chloe remembered all too well. His eyes flickered back to the children, who were now watching them with curious, puzzled expressions. They could sense something was amiss. Why didn't you tell me?" His voice, once filled with disbelief, now carried the weight of hurt, of betrayal. "Because you left me, Nicholas," Chloe whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Arms crossed over her chest like an invisible wall, Chloe turned on her heels and walked away without a word of explanation. "I am alone, humiliated, and pregnant. What do you expect me to do?" The silent question echoed in her mind, filled with anguish and resentment. Nicholas blinked repeatedly, searching for a response, but his throat tightened, and no words came out. He knew Chloe was right. He had no excuse for his cowardice all those years ago. "I need to see the children." Nicholas finally broke the heavy silence. Chloe instinctively took a step back, her gaze wary. "It's not that simple, Nicholas. They don't even know who you are, or why they don't." Her words, sharp as daggers, stabbed straight into Nicholas's heart, laced with bitterness, fury, and lingering pain. She stepped forward, her deep blue eyes, like an autumn lake, locking onto his, her voice like steel. "A father? You have no idea what that word means, Nicholas. You weren't there when I stayed up all night, scraping together every penny just to survive. You weren't there when I had to single-handedly raise 4 children at once. Don't make me laugh, Nicholas." Nicholas swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, but he held his ground. He knew Chloe was right, but he couldn't let the conversation end like this. "I know I made mistakes, but that doesn't change the fact that they're my children too. I have the right to know them, don't I, Chloe?" Chloe let out a bitter chuckle, devoid of any joy, only the acrid taste of the past remained. "You gave up that right the day you left me at the altar." As their argument escalated, James, the most inquisitive of the quadruplets, hesitantly approached, tugging at his mother's dress. His small, clear voice rang out. "Mom, who is this man?" His large brown eyes were filled with curiosity and innocence. Chloe's heart softened as she looked down at her little boy. Before she could answer, Nicholas knelt before James, his face suddenly tender and warm, a stark contrast to the tension that had gripped him moments earlier. "Hey there, kiddo," he said, offering a hesitant but genuine smile. "My name is Nicholas." James tilted his head, studying the unfamiliar man before him, his small eyes full of scrutiny. "Do you know my mom?" Nicholas chuckled lightly, glancing briefly at Chloe before turning back to the boy. "Yes, I know your mom." Chloe took a deep breath, gently pushing James away. Her voice was soft but firm. "Go play with your brothers, sweetheart. I'll be there soon." James hesitated but ultimately obeyed, running back to his siblings. Chloe turned sharply to face Nicholas again, her expression once more cold and unyielding. "You can't just show up and expect everything to be resolved so easily. Life isn't a fairy tale, Nicholas." Nicholas shook his head, his gaze unwavering. "I don't expect things to be fixed overnight. But I'm not walking away this time, Chloe. Not again." A wave of panic surged within Chloe. She knew Nicholas wasn't the type to give up easily. That evening, after putting her children to bed, she lay awake, her heart weighed down by uncertainty. No matter how much she wanted to shield her boys from the turmoil, she knew that now that Nicholas had learned the truth, she couldn't stop him from trying to be part of their lives. Across the city, Nicholas sat alone in his luxurious apartment, staring out at the twinkling city lights. Thoughts of his 4 sons, of Chloe, and of the life they could have had if he had made a different choice years ago consumed his mind. For the first time in years, a fierce determination burned in his heart, an unshakable resolve to make things right. Days later, Chloe was barely recovering from their unexpected encounter when a soft knock echoed at her door. Hesitantly, she opened it, and there Nicholas stood once more. This time, his face was even more resolute, his eyes filled with a mix of regret and determination. "Chloe, we need to talk," he said without preamble. "We have nothing to discuss, Nicholas," she countered, folding her arms, her voice as cold as ice. "I'm not leaving until we do." The tension between them stretched unbearably thin. Chloe knew she couldn't avoid this conversation forever. Before she could slam the door shut, James appeared in the hallway, his innocent gaze bouncing between his mother and Nicholas. "Mom, is this the man from the park the other day?" Chloe forced a strained smile for her son, but Nicholas seized the moment. "Hey kiddo," he greeted again, kneeling to James's level. "I'm Nicholas." James tilted his head, still scrutinizing him with cautious curiosity. Chloe quickly intervened, her voice firm. "James, go back inside, sweetheart. I'll be right there." Once James was out of sight, Chloe turned back to Nicholas, frustration and exasperation clear on her face. "I can't believe you think you can just barge into my life and demand to speak to my children, Nicholas." "Chloe, they're my children too," he countered, his voice calm but filled with unyielding resolve. "I have the right to know them." She let out another bitter laugh. "You forfeited that right the moment you left me at the altar. I raised them alone. You have no idea what I sacrificed, the sleepless nights, the endless struggles. And now you think you can just waltz in like none of that ever happened." Nicholas took a deep breath, struggling to rein in his emotions. He knew she was justified in her anger. But he also knew he couldn't walk away. "I know I failed. I'm not here to make excuses. But that doesn't change the fact that they are my children too." Chloe's chest tightened, a pang of sorrow creeping in. She wanted to protect her sons from pain, from uncertainty. But deep down, she knew Nicholas wouldn't back down so easily. "What do you want, Nicholas?" she asked, her voice weary. "I want to know my sons. I want to spend time with them." "Is that really too much to ask?" His eyes bore into hers, pleading, genuine. "Yes, it is," she snapped without hesitation. "My children don't even know who you are, and I will not let you disrupt their peaceful lives." Nicholas remained silent for a long moment before finally saying the one thing Chloe feared the most. "If you won't let me see them willingly, I'll take legal action." The words Nicholas had just spoken were like an invisible blade, piercing deep into Chloe's heart, leaving behind a dull, throbbing wound. The silence after Nicholas left Chloe's small house grew heavy, suffocating, as if it swallowed every sound, every breath. He had made his stance clear, without a hint of ambiguity. If she did not willingly open the door to her heart and allow him into their children's lives, he would not hesitate to use every legal means at his disposal to claim the rights he believed were rightfully his. Chloe struggled to maintain a composed exterior, but deep inside, she knew that a grueling, relentless battle lay ahead. A few days later, as dawn broke, with its weak rays of sunlight filtering through the window, Chloe received devastating news. Nicholas had officially filed a lawsuit, launching the legal war over custody of their children. The ground seemed to crumble beneath her feet, and every anchor in her life vanished in an instant. Her first reaction was a surge of furious resentment. He had disappeared from her and their children's lives for 5 long years, and now he had the audacity to demand his parental rights. To Chloe, it was the height of irony and absurdity beyond measure. In her desperation, she sought help. The first person who came to mind was none other than Amelia, her closest friend and a seasoned, highly skilled attorney. In the warmth of Chloe's small kitchen, the two women sat across from each other, poring over dry legal documents. "Chloe, we have to be realistic," Amelia said gently, her voice low and full of empathy. "He has money and a powerful legal team backing him. But you have something he can never possess, a long history of dedication and sacrifice. You've been there for your children every single day, raising and nurturing them." As she spoke, Amelia flipped through the pages of the court summons, her eyes scanning the dense lines of text. "But what if that's still not enough?" Chloe asked anxiously, her hands trembling as she clutched her steaming cup of coffee. The heat seeped into her palms, but it did nothing to warm the chill in her heart. "Then we fight, Chloe," Amelia responded firmly, determination gleaming in her eyes. "We fight with everything we have. The first step is building a solid defense for you. We'll gather every piece of evidence, every testimony, anything necessary to prove that you are the best and most deserving parent to care for your children." Chloe nodded, a flicker of fragile hope igniting within her, but the immense burden of the impending legal battle still weighed heavily on her shoulders. She knew she had to fight, to protect her children at all costs, no matter how treacherous the road ahead might be. On the day of the first hearing, Chloe stepped into the courtroom with Amelia steadfastly by her side. Across from her stood Nicholas, accompanied by his attorney, and a familiar figure that made Chloe's heart clench, Emma, his fiancée. A fiery rage flared up inside her as she saw Emma, who looked composed and confident, as if this were nothing more than a casual social gathering. Nicholas's lawyer opened the proceedings with sharp, compelling arguments. He emphasized that Nicholas had the financial stability to provide their 4 sons with a high-quality education, a comfortable, well-resourced home, and an overall secure and prosperous upbringing. Listening to the meticulously crafted, polished rhetoric, Chloe felt as if someone was tightening a vice around her chest. She knew the stark reality was far removed from the idealized picture they were painting. Then it was Amelia's turn to counter. Rising to her feet, she spoke with unwavering confidence and strength. "Your Honor, my client has dedicated her entire life to her children. She has single-handedly raised them, overcoming countless hardships and challenges that not everyone has the strength to endure. Mr. Nicholas may have wealth and material resources, but Chloe possesses something infinitely more valuable, the sacred, irreplaceable bond of motherhood. A bond forged over 5 long years of unwavering love, silent sacrifices, and relentless devotion." The judge listened attentively, meticulously weighing the arguments from both sides. After the hearing, he ruled that further investigation was necessary before making a final decision. He ordered a social worker to assess both Chloe's and Nicholas's living environments to provide an objective evaluation. After the tense court session, Nicholas approached Chloe in the hallway. He looked exhausted, drained, yet his eyes still held firm determination. "I never wanted to take the children away from you, Chloe," he said, his voice low and measured, trying to keep his composure. "I just want to be a part of their lives." "How convenient for you to say that now," Chloe shot back coldly, her voice laced with bitterness and sarcasm. "But you're the one who escalated this to a courtroom battle. That's not the action of someone who truly wants a peaceful resolution." Before Nicholas could respond, Emma suddenly appeared behind him, placing a possessive hand on his shoulder. "We're simply trying to ensure that these children get what they deserve," Emma interjected, her smile cool and artificial. A rush of hot anger surged through Chloe. "What my children deserve is stability and love, the kind I have always given them. I don't need advice from you." Without waiting for a reply, Chloe turned and walked away, struggling to shake off the growing sense of frustration and exhaustion creeping into her soul. She knew this battle was far from over. It was only just beginning. In the following days, tensions escalated further, and Emma's presence became increasingly suffocating. At first, she merely lingered at school events, impeccably dressed, flashing warm smiles at other parents, and making friendly overtures toward the teachers. But soon, malicious rumors began circulating within the parent community, whispers that Chloe was an irresponsible mother who neglected her children. It wasn't hard to guess who was behind this smear campaign, orchestrating the gossip to manipulate public perception. Nicholas's accusations struck Chloe like a bolt of lightning. The silence that followed his departure from her small home grew suffocating, heavy like a dark night swallowing all sound and light. He had spoken clearly, without hesitation. If she did not voluntarily allow him into their children's lives, he would not hesitate to use every legal tool at his disposal to reclaim his rights as a father. Chloe struggled to maintain her composure, but deep down, she knew a grueling legal battle lay ahead. A few days later, as the first rays of the sun cast pale streaks of light through her window, a court summons arrived. Nicholas had officially filed a lawsuit, marking the beginning of a custody battle. The ground beneath Chloe seemed to crumble, all her stability vanishing into nothingness. Her first reaction was a surge of fury, hot and explosive like a volcanic eruption. He had been absent for 5 years, abandoning her and the children, yet now he dared to demand his parental rights? To Chloe, it was an absurdity, an insult she could not stomach. In her desperation, she turned to Amelia, her closest friend and a skilled, experienced lawyer. In Chloe's cozy kitchen, the two women sat across from each other, their eyes fixed on the thick stack of legal documents. "Chloe, we have to face reality," Amelia said, her voice warm and gentle but firm. "He has money and a powerful legal team. But you have something he can never possess, years of devotion, of unwavering care for your children. You have been by their side, nurturing them every single day." As she spoke, Amelia flipped through the court papers, her slender fingers tracing the dry legal text. "But what if that's not enough?" Chloe asked anxiously, her hands trembling as she gripped her warm coffee cup. The heat seeped into her palms, but it did nothing to thaw the chill in her heart. "We will fight, Chloe," Amelia declared, her eyes burning with determination. "We will fight with everything we have. The first step is building a solid defense for you. We'll gather every piece of evidence, every testimony, anything that proves you are the best, most deserving mother for these children." Chloe nodded, a faint glimmer of hope flickering within her, though the weight of the impending legal battle still pressed heavily upon her shoulders. She knew she had to be strong, to protect her children at all costs, no matter how treacherous the road ahead. On the day of the preliminary hearing, Chloe stepped into the courtroom, Amelia steadfastly by her side, a guiding light in the storm. Across the room, Nicholas sat with his lawyer, his posture rigid, and beside him sat a painfully familiar figure, Emma, his fiancée. A surge of fury coursed through Chloe's veins as she caught the triumphant gleam in Emma's eyes. The woman looked smug, as if this were nothing more than a grand performance. Nicholas's attorney began the proceedings with sharp, cutting words. He spoke at length about Nicholas's financial strength, his ability to provide the children with a prestigious education, a life of comfort and luxury, and the safest, most accommodating environment. As the polished rhetoric filled the courtroom like a well-rehearsed speech, Chloe's chest tightened. She knew the harsh truth. The reality was far from the rosy picture they painted. When it was Amelia's turn to respond, she rose, straightened her blazer, and spoke with unwavering conviction. "Your Honor, my client has devoted her entire youth, her entire life to her children. She has raised them single-handedly, overcoming countless hardships and challenges that not everyone could endure. Mr. Nicholas may have wealth and assets, but Chloe possesses something infinitely more valuable, a sacred maternal bond, nurtured over the years with boundless love, quiet sacrifices, and unwavering dedication." The judge listened intently, his eyes, hidden behind reading glasses, scanning the faces of those involved. After the hearing, he ruled that further investigation was necessary, requiring a social worker to visit both Chloe's and Nicholas's residences to assess their living conditions objectively. After the tense hearing, Nicholas approached Chloe in the hallway. His face bore traces of exhaustion, yet his gaze remained steadfast, unwilling to back down. "I never wanted to take the children from you, Chloe," he said, his voice low and hoarse, as if struggling to maintain his composure. "I only want to be part of their lives." "That's easy for you to say," Chloe replied, her voice as cold as ice. "But you're the one who pushed this into a courtroom. A person who truly wanted peace wouldn't have forced things this far." Like a shadow, Emma appeared beside Nicholas, her hand resting possessively on his shoulder. Her voice was sickeningly sweet as she said, "We only want to ensure that the children receive everything they deserve." Emma's forced, hollow smile cut into Chloe like an invisible blade. Her blood boiled. "What my children deserve is stability and genuine love, something I have always given them. I don't need hypocritical advice from you." Before Emma could respond, Chloe turned on her heel and walked away, swallowing the bitter frustration weighing her down. She knew this battle was far from over. In the days that followed, the tension grew thicker, and Emma's presence became suffocating. At first, she merely made discreet appearances at the children's school events, maintaining an air of politeness, charming the other parents, and fostering relationships with the teachers. But soon, malicious rumors began to spread, whispers that Chloe was an irresponsible mother, neglecting her children. It wasn't difficult for Chloe to trace these insidious rumors back to Emma's scheming hands. Things took an even darker turn when the slander extended beyond the school, creeping into gossip columns and tabloid pages, poisoning the public perception of Chloe as a mother. As the trial continued, Amelia solemnly requested the summoning of an unexpected witness. The courtroom doors slowly creaked open, revealing a familiar figure long thought to be gone. It was Eleanor, the loyal housekeeper who had served the Nicholas family for 2 decades. She entered with measured steps, leaning on her cane, yet her eyes still gleamed with unwavering determination. Nicholas sat motionless, tension etched into every feature of his face, while Emma quickly averted her gaze from Eleanor's piercing stare. The elderly housekeeper took the witness stand, her voice clear and steady. She recounted her 20 years of dedicated service to the Nicholas family, speaking with calm composure, yet each word carried the weight of 1,000 truths. She began describing the dark days leading up to the ill-fated wedding. Nicholas's mother, her voice trembled with emotion, orchestrated everything. She deliberately convinced Nicholas that Chloe was unworthy of joining their prestigious family. She preyed on his youth and indecision, planting invisible fears in his mind, that this marriage would destroy his promising future, that Chloe lacked the lineage and social standing befitting their family. The shocking testimony rippled through the courtroom like a bolt of lightning, igniting murmurs and whispers among the attendees. Chloe sat frozen, her heart clenched as if gripped by an unseen force. Though she had long harbored suspicions about Nicholas's mother's involvement, hearing it confirmed by Eleanor cut through her soul. Like a blade, with courage and unwavering loyalty, Eleanor continued, recounting the conversations she had overheard, how Nicholas's mother had manipulated every aspect of her son's life, step by step. Then she paused, her gaze heavy with sorrow, her voice dropping to a solemn tone as she revealed an even more harrowing truth. Emma was part of this too. She was very close to Nicholas's mother and fully supported the idea that he should stay away from Chloe. It was Emma who repeatedly encouraged and pushed Nicholas to make the heartless decision to call off the engagement. A wave of gasps and hushed discussions erupted, growing louder by the second. Nicholas turned sharply to face Emma, his eyes widening in disbelief. He struggled to process the accusations. That's not true," Emma shrieked, springing to her feet, her face pale as a ghost. The judge immediately struck the gavel against the bench, demanding order in the courtroom. Nicholas, however, kept his gaze locked on Emma, his eyes filled with doubt and pain. You knew about all of this?" he asked, his voice hoarse, thick with heartbreak and disappointment. Emma frantically tried to deny, to explain herself, but the panic and confusion on her face betrayed her. Despite Nicholas's lawyer's attempts to discredit Eleanor's testimony, its impact was undeniable. The trial was adjourned to allow the judge time to review the newly revealed evidence. As Chloe stepped out of the courtroom, Eleanor supported her, walking beside her. Years of pent-up resentment, anguish, and unanswered questions finally felt acknowledged, understood, and validated. But Chloe knew the battle was far from over. Across the hallway, Nicholas stood motionless, his expression hollow, his entire world seemingly crumbling beneath him. Emma reached for his hand, trying to pull him away, but he forcefully wrenched himself free, pushing her aside. His body trembled from shock, yet he could still hear Emma desperately pleading with him, her voice cracking with panic. But Chloe could sense it. Something between them was fracturing, breaking beyond repair. Although a quiet sense of relief settled in Chloe's heart as the truth began to unfold, she remained keenly aware that the legal fight was far from finished. However, the events of the trial had triggered a shift. Nicholas was no longer the cold, distant man she once knew. He began visiting their children more frequently, always under careful supervision, but each time he brought small, thoughtful gifts. They weren't extravagant or flashy, but deeply personal. A picture book James adored, a new soccer ball for Brian, a vibrant set of colored pencils for Michael's artistic pursuits, and a challenging Lego set for the ever-curious Hunter. At first, The four boys remained wary of the father who had suddenly re-entered their lives. But Nicholas's patience and sincerity gradually melted the ice between them. He listened attentively to their stories, joined in their playful antics, and even sat cross-legged on the floor, helping them piece together Lego sets or color outside the lines in their drawings. Chloe watched from a distance, cautious but unable to ignore the undeniable joy in her children's laughter, pure and unforced. One breezy afternoon, Nicholas arrived with a colorful kite and meticulously taught the boys how to fly it. Curious, Chloe stepped closer to observe. The wind whistled through the open field as the four boys ran across the lush grass, trying to keep the kite soaring high. Nicholas stood beside them, cheering them on. Brian, the most competitive of the group, strained to keep his kite in the air the longest, then erupted into triumphant laughter when he succeeded. Nicholas scooped him up in a warm embrace, and in that moment, Chloe saw something she had never dared to hope for. Nicholas was genuinely happy. His smile, so radiant and unguarded, was free of calculation or pretense. As the weeks passed, Chloe realized that Nicholas's efforts were not fleeting or superficial. He showed a genuine interest in their children's daily lives. He asked about school, their friends, and even the smallest challenges they faced. He took Michael to art class, encouraged Hunter when he mastered a difficult new word, and always made sure to praise James whenever he improved in math. These moments, though seemingly small, signified something profound. Nicholas was truly present in their children's lives, with sincerity and devotion. Yet, despite all this, Chloe remained cautious. No matter how sincere Nicholas seemed, an undeniable chasm still lay between them, a past filled with wounds and disappointments that could not be easily erased. On a quiet evening, as Chloe busily tidied up the kitchen after a modest dinner, Nicholas silently stepped in. Without a word, he began helping her. The cozy kitchen was enveloped in silence, broken only by the soft clinking of dishes and the gentle trickle of water from the faucet. Finally, Nicholas spoke, his voice low, almost a whisper, shattering the stillness. "Thank you, Chloe. Thank you for giving me the chance to be part of the kids' lives. I know I don't deserve it." Chloe froze, her hand trembling slightly as she held a white porcelain plate. A biting remark lingered on the tip of her tongue, a sharp retort to remind him of past mistakes, the years of his absence, the debts he still owed her and the children. But when her gaze met Nicholas's deep brown eyes, the bitterness faded. In them, she saw sincerity, regret, and a fragile hope. He was no longer the confident, arrogant man she once knew. Instead, he was now a mature, humble man, trying his best to do what was right, even if it was late. "The kids are happy, that's what matters most," Chloe responded gently, her voice softening as she turned back to the sink. But deep inside, an indescribable warmth spread through her. She knew, she too felt a quiet happiness, seeing the radiant smiles on their children's faces, witnessing the changes in Nicholas. Time passed, and Nicholas's presence in the lives of the four boys became natural, familiar. James, the mischievous eldest, was the first to call him Dad spontaneously during a lively soccer game at the park. Nicholas froze, his entire body stiffening for a moment, overwhelmed with emotion. Yet, he didn't make a big deal out of it. He simply smiled and threw himself back into the game. Before long, Michael, Brian, and Hunter also began calling him Dad, with affection and warmth. Chloe realized that something genuine and profound was growing between Nicholas and the children. Even her own heart, hardened by past wounds, was beginning to soften. Still, she remained steadfast in her independence. She continued to manage everything on her own, ensuring that her role as a mother was never diminished. What surprised her was that Nicholas seemed to understand this. He never overstepped the boundaries she set. He was always ready to help but never interfered with how she raised the children. One rare peaceful evening, Nicholas brought an old photo album. He handed it to Chloe with care, his voice gentle as he explained that it held precious memories of his childhood, memories he wanted to share with their sons. Chloe flipped through the pages, reminiscing with Nicholas about the stories behind each picture. The four boys huddled close, their eyes wide with curiosity and wonder. It was an ordinary moment, yet it made Chloe realize that Nicholas wasn't just trying to reconnect with the children. He was also trying to rebuild something with her, sincerely, from the depths of his heart. While everything seemed to be moving in a positive direction, Emma refused to accept the harsh reality. After her shocking testimony in court, she had lost most of her influence over Nicholas, and the humiliation burned within her. It wasn't just the sting of rejection that tormented her, it was the public disgrace. Watching Nicholas grow closer to Chloe and the children while she was pushed aside filled her with seething rage. For weeks, she schemed in the shadows, gathering information, pulling strings behind the scenes, and weaving a devious plan to shatter the fragile peace between Chloe and Nicholas. In Emma's mind, Chloe was to blame for everything, and the four boys were nothing more than obstacles standing in her way, obstacles she needed to eliminate to reclaim Nicholas for herself. Just as Chloe and Nicholas were growing more comfortable with each other, almost like friends, and as the boys had fully embraced their father's presence in their lives, Emma made her move. One day, Chloe received a call from an unknown number. On the other end, a chilling, high-pitched voice sent a wave of unease through her. "How long do you think this charade will last? Just wait and see what's coming." Chloe recognized the threatening voice immediately. Her heart clenched, and an ominous feeling settled over her. But she refused to let fear show. She hung up without a word and returned to the living room, where the boys laughed and played with Nicholas. She knew Emma wouldn't give up easily, but this time Chloe was ready. She would fight for her family, for the happiness they had just begun to rebuild. Meanwhile, Emma remained relentless, fueling her determination to destroy the bond forming between Nicholas, Chloe, and the children. In her mind, the court's decision was merely temporary. She was prepared to do whatever it took, even the most despicable acts, to tear them apart, reclaim Nicholas, and crush Chloe under her heel. As Nicholas spent more and more time with the children, it became a new normal in their household. Though still cautious, Chloe allowed him to be with them, always, under her watchful eye. Nicholas never complained about the conditions she set. Instead, he seemed genuinely committed to proving that he could be a good father and a reliable presence in their lives. At first, Chloe maintained a clear emotional distance from Nicholas, an invisible barrier she had carefully built. She observed him quietly, scrutinizing his every move, the way he played with the boys, the way he spoke to them, always on guard, afraid that he might leave them again. But as weeks and months passed, it became evident that Nicholas was truly changing. He didn't just play with the boys, he paid attention to the little things. He helped James build a robot for a school project. He taught Brian how to kick a soccer ball with precision. He encouraged Hunter to overcome his fear of heights at the playground. He praised Michael's drawings, carefully storing them in a folder he always carried with him. One afternoon, as the children played in the backyard, Nicholas offered to help Chloe with dinner. She hesitated at first, but eventually relented. He clumsily chopped vegetables, his inexperience evident, but he didn't give up. "I never pictured you in the kitchen," Chloe remarked with a hint of sarcasm. Nicholas chuckled, continuing to awkwardly slice carrots. "I know. To be honest, I've never had to do this before. But I think it's about time I learned, don't you?" Chloe watched him for a moment before turning back to stir the pot. There was something different about him, something she couldn't ignore, no matter how much she wanted to remain cautious. She couldn't deny it anymore. His simple gestures, his patience with the boys, they had begun to change the way she saw him. One evening, as Chloe busied herself tidying up the kitchen after a simple dinner, Nicholas unexpectedly brought a small joy, a sweet surprise. He pulled out an old acoustic guitar he had brought with him, a worn instrument that carried a treasure trove of memories. Taking a seat on the familiar long bench, he was soon surrounded by four eager boys, their eyes filled with anticipation. Nicholas' fingers gently strummed the strings, producing simple, warm, and melodious notes that filled the small room. Then he began to sing, a familiar children's song, his voice clear and tender. The boys burst into laughter, especially when Nicholas intentionally sang the wrong lyrics, creating a cascade of cheerful, unrestrained giggles. Standing quietly by the kitchen doorway, Chloe observed the warm scene unfolding before her. Unconsciously, a rare smile graced her lips. How long had it been since she last felt this sense of peace and lightness in her heart? How long had it been since she had seen her children so carefree and joyful? Over the past few weeks, the four boys had begun forming an invisible bond with Nicholas, a father-son connection that was natural and close, far beyond what Chloe had dared to hope for. Brian, usually the most reserved and timid of the boys, had started asking Nicholas, just before he left, "When will you visit us again, Dad?" Michael, the dreamy little artist, eagerly showed Nicholas his scribbled drawings, his eyes shining with pride. James, the lively and mischievous eldest, never missed an opportunity to pull Nicholas into playing video games with him, their excited voices and playful debates echoing throughout the house. And then there was Hunter, the shy youngest, who trailed after Nicholas wherever he went, imitating his every move, like a little fledgling following the shadow of his father. This transformation was undeniable, almost miraculous. Yet, within Chloe, conflicting emotions continued to wrestle. Part of her felt warmth and happiness, witnessing her sons create beautiful memories with their father. But another part of her carried a lingering fear, that all of this was fragile, that it could shatter at any moment. Nicholas seemed to have truly changed, but was this change permanent? Could she really forgive him and open her heart to let him back into their lives? The questions gnawed at her, leaving her tangled in uncertainty. On a morning bathed in soft golden sunlight, the family took a walk in the park. Nicholas sat down on a bench beside Chloe, while the boys ran across the lush green grass, their laughter ringing through the air. He let out a quiet sigh before turning to her, his expression sincere, serious. "Thank you, Chloe. Thank you for giving me the chance to be here with them," he said, his voice warm, carrying a hint of emotion. I know I don't deserve another chance from you." Chloe kept her eyes on the boys as they played, but she listened to every word, her heart stirring. She answered him honestly, without pretense. "It's not about whether I believe in you, Nicholas. It's about the kids needing stability, and I can't risk letting you walk out of their lives again." Nicholas nodded, his gaze shadowed with sadness but full of understanding. I understand that. But I'm here now, Chloe, and I'm not going anywhere." Though doubts still lingered, Chloe couldn't deny that Nicholas had kept his promises since his return. Maybe, just maybe, he was truly determined to be a responsible father, a man she could rely on. One evening, after tucking the boys into bed, Nicholas lingered in their room. Sitting on the floor, he gently held an old photo album he had brought, flipping through its worn pages with a nostalgic gaze. The four boys, ever curious and full of energy, quickly gathered around him, eager to uncover the secrets of their father's childhood. Nicholas, with patient warmth, began to share stories from his past. "When I was a boy, I loved tinkering and building things," he started, turning a page slowly. "Once, Grandpa gave me a box of construction toys, and I spent weeks trying to build a little wooden house in the backyard. Of course, it collapsed completely after the first rain, but it was still one of the happiest times of my childhood." The boys erupted into laughter. James excitedly asked, "Then can we build something together, Dad?" Nicholas smiled, a gentle warmth in his eyes. "Of course, my boys. We'll start this weekend." As he continued flipping through the album, sharing cherished memories, a particular photo caught Hunter's quiet attention. It showed a young Nicholas holding a complex mechanical toy in his tiny hands. Intrigued, Hunter bombarded his father with questions, eager to understand how it worked. With infinite patience, Nicholas explained every detail, his face lighting up with joy at being able to share his childhood passion with his son. From the doorway, Chloe watched in silence, witnessing an unspoken, invisible thread gradually weaving father and son together. She saw the spark in Hunter's eyes and felt something shift within her. When the boys finally drifted off to sleep, Chloe stepped in to turn off the lights. Nicholas remained seated on the floor, staring at the album with a wistful smile. "Thank you for this," he murmured, not looking up. "They're giving me something I didn't even know I needed." Chloe didn't respond right away. She simply nodded and left him there. But deep inside, she knew something within her was changing too. Maybe it was time to reconsider what she once thought was unforgivable. The next morning, Nicholas arrived with tools and materials to build a small wooden playhouse with the boys. The backyard soon filled with the sounds of hammers clumsily striking nails, mingled with bursts of laughter. From the porch, Chloe couldn't help but smile. This was more than just a project. It was a symbol of something bigger taking shape. Despite all the progress, she still held back. She knew Emma had not completely disappeared from the picture, and that at any moment, something could come along to break the fragile balance they were starting to build. But for now, she chose to savor the present. That night, as the boys slept, Chloe reflected on all the changes in the past few weeks. Nicholas was no longer the man she had known years ago. He still had his flaws, but he seemed genuinely committed to being a positive presence in his children's lives. Maybe, just maybe, it was time for her to lower her guard, at least a little. Meanwhile, Emma, with a heart bleeding from jealousy and hatred, continued to grind her teeth in frustration as Nicholas and Chloe grew closer. To her, their blossoming relationship, like a fresh green sprout pushing through the frozen winter soil, posed a direct threat to everything she had worked so hard to build with Nicholas. This time, Emma was determined not to let the opportunity slip away. She swore that no one, nothing, would stand in her way of claiming Nicholas once more. The following days passed in an atmosphere of awkwardness, yet quiet hope. In Chloe's small house, she and Nicholas gradually found an unexpected harmony, a peaceful coexistence neither of them had ever dared to dream of. Though the invisible walls in Chloe's heart remained, standing tall like fortress barriers, their conversations had become more natural and effortless, no longer strained or distant as before. And the moments they shared with the four boys, their laughter, their sparkling eyes filled with joy, hinted at something miraculous beginning to change between them. Unlike the Nicholas of the past, arrogant and domineering, he now showed patience, sincerity, and a genuine effort to be a responsible father, a reliable man. Yet, he did so without forcefulness or desperation always, maintaining a respectful distance from Chloe. One late afternoon, as Chloe was preparing lunch for the children, Nicholas quietly stepped into the kitchen, holding a pristine white envelope. "Chloe, can I talk to you for a moment?" His voice was warm, tinged with hesitation. Chloe looked up at him, her gaze still guarded, but after a brief pause, she gave a slight nod. Nicholas placed the envelope on the table, saying nothing, only standing there in silence, his eyes filled with sincerity. A moment of quiet settled over the small kitchen before he finally spoke, his voice steadier than his expression. I know that in the past, I refused to help you financially. But this time is different. I want you to accept this." As he spoke, he gently pushed the envelope toward her. Chloe hesitated before opening it. Inside was a check, an amount large enough to cover all expenses and bills for the 4 children for months to come. Immediately, she shook her head, firmly refusing. "Nicholas, I don't need this. I've always managed to take care of the kids on my own, and I'll continue to do so." Nicholas raised his hands in a gesture of surrender, but his gaze remained unwavering as he met Chloe's eyes. "I know, Chloe. I know you can handle things on your own. I know how hard you've worked to give them a stable life. But this isn't just about money, Chloe. It's about me wanting to truly be a part of their lives. I don't want financial burdens to weigh on you any longer." Chloe remained silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the check as she processed his words. The Nicholas of the past would have thrown money at her with arrogance, believing wealth could solve everything. But the Nicholas standing before her now was different. There was no trace of pride or condescension in his demeanor, only humility, sincerity, and a deep sense of regret. "Let me think about it," Chloe finally said, her voice softer as she folded the check and placed it back in the envelope. Nicholas accepted her response with respect, making no effort to push further. That, in itself, surprised her. Perhaps Nicholas was truly learning to respect the boundaries she had set. In the weeks that followed, his efforts became increasingly evident and commendable. He wasn't just offering financial support, he was actively present in the children's daily lives. He drove them to school every morning, patiently helped with their homework every afternoon, and even learned from Chloe how to handle the little crises of childhood, tantrums, broken toys, scraped knees. For Chloe, it was astonishing to witness a man who once seemed so distant and cold now becoming warm, attentive, and devoted. One peaceful evening, after a long and busy day, Nicholas and Chloe sat together on the porch, gazing at the moonlight gently illuminating the small backyard. The 4 boys were fast asleep in their rooms, leaving only the sound of crickets chirping in the stillness of the night. Scattered around the grass were tools from their afternoons spent building a wooden playhouse, a quiet testament to a day filled with laughter and hard work. "You know, Chloe," Nicholas finally spoke, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "I never thought I'd have this." Chloe glanced at him, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice light as the evening breeze. "I mean being here with you with the kids," he admitted. "For years, I chased after work, after expectations that weren't even my own. I was so consumed by it all that I lost sight of what truly mattered. And now, as I try to rebuild, to make things right, I keep wondering, why did it take me so long to realize it?" Chloe crossed her arms, leaning against the wooden doorframe, her gaze drifting to the dark horizon. "Sometimes we only recognize what's truly important when we've nearly lost everything," she murmured. Nicholas nodded slowly, as if absorbing her words. Yet, in his eyes, there was something deeper, an unresolved burden. He hesitated before speaking again, his voice carrying a weight of unspoken truths. "Chloe, there's something I need to tell you. About what really happened on our wedding day." Chloe felt her entire body tense, her muscles stiffening instinctively. For 5 long years, she had buried the pain of being abandoned at the altar. Though some wounds had started to close, the scars still ached whenever the past was stirred. She gave him a small nod, signaling him to continue, though her heart pounded with apprehension. My mother, she didn't just convince me to cancel the wedding, Nicholas confessed, taking a deep breath as if gathering the last of his courage. She threatened to cut off all financial support from the family. She said that if I insisted on marrying you, I would have to fend for myself, with no help from them. Chloe blinked, stunned by his admission. So, you left me because you were afraid of losing your family's money? She asked, her voice laced with bitterness and disappointment. No, it wasn't just about the money, Nicholas hurriedly replied, his voice urgent. It was everything. My mother controlled every aspect of my life. I was a coward, Chloe. I didn't have the courage to stand up to her, to face her threats. So, I ran away. I know, he exhaled sharply, his tone filled with remorse. I know there's no excuse for what I did to you, but you deserve to know the truth. Chloe remained silent, her emotions swirling in a storm of anger, sorrow, and, unexpectedly, a flicker of understanding. The final pieces of the past had fallen into place, revealing a painful yet undeniable truth. But could that truth ever heal the wounds she had carried for so many years? You should have told me this sooner, she finally whispered, her voice trembling with raw emotion. We could have faced it together. I was always willing to stand by you. I know, Nicholas admitted, his eyes filled with regret. But back then, I was too young, too reckless, too foolish. I made the wrong choice, and I've paid for it every day since. A heavy silence stretched between them, yet Chloe felt something within her begin to crack. Not the kind of truth that could erase years of pain, but perhaps a small step forward. She looked at him, uncertainty lingering in her gaze. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully forgive you, Nicholas, she admitted. But at least now I finally know what really happened. Nicholas nodded, accepting her words with quiet humility. That's all I can ask for. At the break of dawn, as the gentle morning light filtered through the window, awakening all things from their deep slumber, Chloe silently observed the warm scene unfolding before her. Four little boys excitedly surrounded Nicholas, their small arms wrapped tightly around his legs as soon as they caught sight of their familiar father standing at the doorway. The sound of cheerful laughter, the joyful shouts of the children blended into the peaceful morning air, creating a sweet and harmonious symphony of family happiness. For the first time in all those long years, Chloe felt a faint tremor in her heart, an unfamiliar warmth spreading through her chest. She could sense it, something was truly changing, shifting in a better direction. The road ahead remained long and uncertain, but perhaps, just perhaps, this little family, after enduring so many storms, was finally beginning to find its way back to peace, embarking on a journey of reunion and togetherness. The courtroom was once again packed with people. Chloe arrived early, her trembling hand gripping that of Amelia, her dear friend and devoted lawyer. Taking a deep breath, she tried to steady herself, though her heart still pounded uncontrollably. Ever since learning the harsh truth about being abandoned at the altar all those years ago, the weight in her heart had somewhat lessened. The bitterness and resentment had begun to fade. But she still wasn't ready to fully forgive Nicholas. The wounds of the past still throbbed, aching whenever the winds of memory stirred. The tension between them had eased, yet the burden of the legal battle remained heavy on Chloe's weary shoulders. Nicholas entered the courtroom, accompanied by his personal lawyer as always. But today there was something different about him. His expression was more serious, his gaze more focused, more resolute. He was no longer the charming, overly confident man Chloe had once known. Surprisingly, Emma was absent. Though no one questioned her disappearance, its significance was unmistakable. Chloe suspected that, after her damaging testimony in the previous trial, Emma had chosen to retreat, hiding in the shadows to escape further scrutiny, condemnation, and disdain from the public. The judge entered, and the solemn atmosphere settled over the courtroom. The final hearing began. Both legal teams presented their sharp and compelling arguments, bringing the long weeks of legal dispute to a close. With her characteristic intelligence and precision, Amelia once again emphasized the sacred maternal bond Chloe had tirelessly nurtured with the four boys, asserting that she was the true parental figure, the unwavering pillar of love and support in their lives. On Nicholas's side, his lawyer argued that he had fundamentally changed, that he was now fully committed to being a responsible father, and that his involvement in the children's upbringing was essential for their overall well-being. When Nicholas took the witness stand, Chloe watched his every move, scrutinizing his every expression. His voice was calm and deep as he admitted his past mistakes without evasion, taking full responsibility for his poor choices. He acknowledged Chloe's skepticism and hesitation, but, at the same time, conveyed an unshakable determination to regain her trust and their children's. "I don't expect Chloe to forgive me immediately," Nicholas said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I am here, today and always, because I want to be the father my children deserve. And I will never, never abandon them again." His heartfelt words echoed through the courtroom, resonating with everyone present. Chloe felt a surge of emotion welling up inside her, but she maintained her composed exterior, refusing to let anything show. Trusting him again was still too difficult, but deep within, she could sense the sincerity, the remorse he was trying so desperately to convey. Then it was Chloe's turn to speak. She stood up, adjusting the hem of her dress. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady and unwavering. "For 5 years, I have been everything to my children. I have raised them alone, overcome countless hardships that only single mothers can truly understand. They are my absolute priority, and I will always do what is best for them. If that means allowing Nicholas to be a part of their lives, I am willing to consider it. But let me be clear, my trust will not be given easily." The judge listened intently, carefully weighing both statements. After several hours of deliberation, he delivered his decision. Chloe would retain primary custody of the children. However, Nicholas would be granted regular visitation rights and would be actively involved in their upbringing. Both parents were expected to work together to ensure the happiness and well-being of their children. Chloe felt both relief and uncertainty. It was the most balanced outcome, yet she couldn't shake the lingering worry about what it truly meant in the long run. On the other hand, Nicholas seemed to have relieved himself of a heavy burden. He gave Chloe a deep, thankful look and let out a small, relieved smile. Chloe responded with a subtle nod, a small gesture of reconciliation, yet filled with a sea of hope. After the hearing, as people began to leave the courtroom, Emma unexpectedly appeared, like a dark ghost manifesting in broad daylight. She stood there, her face cold and stern, her eyes sharp as daggers piercing into. "Nicholas, you really think you can become a perfect father?" she hissed, her tone biting, full of sarcasm. Nicholas calmly received her hateful glare, his face unshaken. "I'll try my best. And that's what matters," he replied. Emma scoffed, but in her laughter, there was a bitterness, a deep sorrow hidden beneath. "Good luck with that illusion," she spat, but then her voice softened, as if confessing her own helplessness. "Anyway, you've got what you wanted, haven't you?" With that, she turned and hurried out of the courtroom, her figure fading behind the door like the end of a painful chapter in Chloe and Nicholas's lives. Chloe felt a sense of relief surge inside her as she watched Emma's solitary figure disappear. Finally, she had let go. Everything could begin to move forward in a better direction now, free from the schemes and the tension, with no more dramatic confrontations. That late afternoon, Nicholas arrived at Chloe's house. He wanted to see the kids, but deep down, he also felt the need for a serious conversation with her. As soon as he stepped to the door, the 4 boys rushed to greet him with tight hugs and radiant smiles. They were so used to their father's presence in their lives, seeing him as an irreplaceable part of their small family. However, Chloe still stood quietly in the kitchen, her gaze following every gesture and action between the father and his children, a sense of reservation still lingering in her eyes. After the kids had pulled Nicholas into the living room, Chloe slowly followed behind. Nicholas turned, his gaze slightly hesitant, but still filled with determination. "Chloe, can we talk for a minute?" he asked. She nodded and led him into the living room. They sat down on the familiar couch, a quiet silence enveloping the room. Then Nicholas spoke, his voice warm and sincere. "I want to thank you, Chloe. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of the kids' lives. I know it hasn't been easy for you." He hesitated for a moment before continuing, his voice turning more formal. "There's something else I need to say to you." Chloe furrowed her brow, her eyes filled with both curiosity and caution, waiting for him to reveal what he had been hiding all this time. "What is it?" Chloe asked softly, her voice a little shaky, her eyes probing Nicholas's, trying to read the emotions behind his calm exterior. Nicholas took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling as if holding back a storm, before speaking. I still love you, Chloe," he said, his voice deep and hoarse, filled with regret. "I've always loved you. I never stopped, not even for a second. I know it's too late to say this, but I need you to know the truth in my heart. Nicholas's unexpected confession struck Chloe like a bolt of lightning. She froze, her eyes wide, staring deeply into his, searching for any signs of deceit, any hint of pretense. But all she saw was sincerity, a heartfelt longing, and a pain that couldn't be denied. Over the years, Chloe had buried the pain of being abandoned by him, but alongside that pain, there had always burned a flickering flame of love, one that had long since withered, yet never fully extinguished. Hearing his words now, her heart was in turmoil, tangled in a web of conflicting emotions. Nicholas, I don't know what to say, Chloe stammered, her voice wavering. So much has happened between us. Words, can't heal all these wounds. I know, Nicholas nodded gently, a sad smile tugging at his lips. I know that. I'm not asking you to return my feelings right away. I just want you to know the truth in my heart. And if one day you're ready to think about a future beyond the pain of the past, then I'll be here waiting for you. Chloe remained silent, not responding, her gaze fixed on the floor, as if searching for an answer amidst the chaos of her thoughts. Nicholas did not pressure her to reply immediately. He stood up, softly saying, "Good night," before quietly leaving Chloe to face her swirling emotions alone. As Nicholas's figure faded from view behind the door, Chloe remained still on the couch, her mind reeling with a storm of emotions. On one hand, she felt relief in finally hearing Nicholas confess the truth he had kept hidden for all these years. But on the other hand, she knew there was still so much to resolve, so many wounds left to heal. She looked toward the children's room, where the 4 boys were happily playing, their laughter filling the air, bringing her back to reality. Chloe decided that, for now, the most important thing was her children. She needed to focus all her energy on protecting and nurturing them, to give them a peaceful, happy life. Nicholas was trying to make up for his past mistakes, and perhaps, in some distant future, she might consider his words. But for now, her top priority was the peace and happiness of her 4 little ones. Months of quiet passed since the final hearing, and Chloe and Nicholas's lives slowly settled into a stable, harmonious rhythm. Their new routine began to form naturally, without forcing anything. Nicholas became more and more present, not just in the boys' lives, but also in Chloe's daily life. Their relationship, initially just revolving around their shared responsibilities as parents, slowly began to grow and develop naturally little by little. Casual lunches together, late-night conversations, sweet moments of sharing beside the 4 boys. All these things became a familiar part of their lives, something neither Chloe nor Nicholas had ever dared to dream of. On a sunny day, during a picnic at their usual park, as the boys were happily playing on the tall slide, Nicholas approached Chloe, his face slightly anxious, hesitant. "Chloe, I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything that has happened, and what is happening now." Chloe looked up at him, her gaze encouraging, waiting for him to continue. "So, what about this, Chloe?" Nicholas took a deep breath, gathering his courage, and made a bold proposal. Maybe we should try again? Not for the kids, but for us. Because I want to show you that I can become the man you deserve." Chloe remained silent for a moment, her eyes fixed on the boys in the distance. The days they spent together, like the gentle flow of a river, gradually washed away all the doubts in Chloe's heart, revealing a completely different side of Nicholas. He had become more humble, more patient, and despite the wounds in his heart still bleeding, a warm and gentle fire had ignited in Chloe's heart, telling her that perhaps a second chance was truly worth it. "That won't be easy, Nicholas," Chloe finally spoke, her voice as light as a breeze, but filled with a vast sea of thought. "There's still so much we need to resolve." Nicholas nodded gently, a kind smile blossoming on his lips, his eyes filled with determination. "I know, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Chloe." The following months felt like a fresh, pristine page, unfolding before Chloe and Nicholas, marking the beginning of a hopeful new chapter. They began their journey to rediscover the relationship that had once faltered, now deeper, more mature, and with 4 boys at the heart of their family life. Small acts of care, yet carrying immense significance, quietly nurtured and strengthened their love. A cozy dinner Nicholas prepared after a long day when Chloe was busy with work, a sweet message of encouragement Chloe sent to Nicholas when he faced challenges at the office, and simple, everyday moments when they laughed together while watching their 4 sons play on the lush green lawn in front of the house. All these little things, seemingly insignificant, quietly built a solid foundation for their rekindling relationship, something neither Chloe nor Nicholas had dared to imagine before. One beautiful day, when the sun poured golden honey over the vast field of colorful flowers, Nicholas took Chloe and their 4 boys for a picnic. The sky was clear and vast, the gentle breeze carried the fragrant scent of grass and flowers. The 4 boys, playful as wild ponies, ran freely, playing in the sea of flowers. Nicholas gently held Chloe's hand, signaling his desire to take a walk along the winding path through the fields of flowers. He was hiding something in his hand, but kept it a secret, making Chloe curious. When they reached an empty spot with a clear view of the entire breathtaking flower field, Nicholas stopped, turned to face Chloe, and gazed tenderly and lovingly into her blue eyes. "Chloe," his voice was warm, choked with emotion, "you've shown me what true, deep love is. Not just the love I have for you, but the vast love I feel for our children. You are the reason, the motivation for me to want to become a better man, a better father. I want this second chance to last forever. Chloe, will you marry me?" With that, Nicholas nervously opened a small velvet box, revealing a sparkling diamond ring, simple yet incredibly delicate, as if reflecting his sincerity and the simplicity in every word he spoke. Chloe felt a warm tear well up in her eyes. She had imagined, dreamed of this moment countless times. But now, when the moment had truly come, right at this moment, her answer in her heart was clear, without a shred of doubt. "Yes, Nicholas, I agree." The 4 boys, who had been watching from a distance, cheered and shouted with joy as they saw their father's romantic proposal. They rushed toward their parents. James, the mischievous eldest, was the first to speak. "Mom, are you going to marry Dad, Nicholas? That means we're really going to be a family, right, Mom?" Chloe laughed happily, kneeling down to hug her 4 little sons, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, my love. We will be a real family." The months that followed were filled with lively laughter and chaotic but joyful moments as the entire family busied themselves preparing for the big wedding day. The 4 boys were incredibly excited, insisting on participating in every detail, from choosing the wedding flowers and cake to decorating the venue. During the joyous months of wedding preparations, Chloe's small home was filled with laughter and sweet, bustling moments. The 4 boys, like chirping little birds, eagerly gathered around for every task, from selecting the beautiful wedding invitations to decorating the small garden, now bursting with colorful flowers. The big day, the day when love and hope blossomed, was drawing near, bringing with it much joy and anticipation. The boys, especially, insisted on contributing to every detail, making the atmosphere in the family even warmer and livelier. Finally, the wedding day arrived, like a sweet dream coming true. Chloe's modest garden had transformed into a magnificent, poetic space, adorned with vibrant flowers and pure white ribbons. The soft, harmonious music echoed throughout the space, blending with the joyful laughter and blessings of friends and family, creating a harmonious symphony of happiness and fulfillment. The 4 boys, each with their unique charm, took on special roles during the ceremony. James, the composed eldest, carefully held the wedding ring tray, walking steadily across the lush grass. Michael, the artistic romantic, meticulously decorated the aisle with bright, colorful flower petals. Brian, the playful second son, prepared a heartfelt and charming speech that moved everyone in the crowd. And Hunter, the shy youngest, was incredibly brave that day, holding Chloe's hand tightly, guiding her down the aisle, offering the love of a mother to the man she loved. When Chloe and Nicholas exchanged vows under the loving gaze of their friends and family, the entire space seemed to stand still, with only the sound of hearts beating in unison. It felt as if all the past sufferings and losses had finally been buried, making way for a bright, radiant future, one they had nurtured together, overcoming countless challenges and obstacles along the way. After the intimate ceremony, the family joined in the joyful, festive atmosphere of the celebration. The playful children ran and played throughout the garden, their cheerful laughter echoing like melodies of happiness. Chloe and Nicholas gracefully danced together in a passionate waltz under the shimmering lights. In Nicholas' warm embrace, Chloe felt the complete joy of fulfillment. Her heart was lighter, more peaceful than ever after all the storms of the years. Nicholas held her tighter, whispering sweet words of love into her ear. "I promise you, Chloe. I promise I will make you and our children happy every day of my life." Chloe smiled brightly, gazing up at Nicholas, her eyes shining with love and trust. "We are already a family, Nicholas," she responded gently, warmly, "and that is all that matters." On their sweet honeymoon night, before falling into a deep sleep, Chloe and Nicholas were surprised to receive a priceless gift from their 4 little boys. an album lovingly prepared by the children, filled with scribbled drawings, but containing countless moments of happiness shared by the family. On the last page of the album, the four boys carefully wrote a clumsy but heartfelt message. "Our family is forever." Chloe, moved, closed the album and held it tightly to her chest, tears of happiness running down her cheeks. For the first time in so many years, she truly felt that the arduous journey, which began with pains that seemed insurmountable, had led her to a shore of happiness, a something beautiful, a real family built on love, patience, and the burning desire to start over once more. Do you think Chloe made the right decision in forgiving Nicholas? Share your thoughts in the comments and rate this story from 0 to 10. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to follow all our stories and watch more touching stories by clicking here on the final screen.